Silly Billy.
Hello, can you hear me now?
There he is.
We can hear you now. Good day,
hear
sir.
you.
He's definitely
I
feeling-
apologize about that before.
It's okay.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to have a bit of a chat. I've actually had a discussion with Yusuf a few months ago when he was just getting back from COVID, and so this conversation, or at least this idea, is a bit of an extension of.
Where did we talk?
At Lighthouse Foundation, I think it's called Lighthouse.
Oh yeah. I remember.
Yeah,
now.
so Tom Morgan's my name, and we had a decent chat. At the time, I was having difficulties with the concept that God creates unbelievers and creates sinners for the hellfire, yet calls himself merciful. You know, and to me that seems like a contradiction. And
Tom, can I just stop you a second? Tom.
Yep.
I'll just stop you 1 second. You said you've had a conversation with Yusuf. Yeah.
Correct.
And you've not heard a logical argument for God.
We didn't discuss logical arguments for God at that particular conversation. Was purely
out there, man. Sorry, carry on, Tom.
That's okay. So, and my issue is sort of continued from that conversation. So initially, it seemed to me a contradiction that you would claim that you've got a loving God that creates human beings, and by the Quran, the majority of human beings for the hellfire. And from there, I've had continued thinking about it. And now I've sort of run into the issue of free will versus determinism, seeming to also raise another bit of a conflict or contradiction, that it appears that if Allah wills everything, and if you're using the cosmological argument that everything in reality is part of a causal chain that was set by Allah, and Allah knew everything at that point, then it's the whole concept of sin, the concept of forgiveness doesn't really seem to make any sense. Like that. So the foundation of that interpersonal Abrahamic God that will, forgive you or send you to hell for sins, when in actual fact it looks as if we don't really have free will. And my personal viewpoint would be that no, we don't have free will, that we just experience our decision making, and it feels as if we're making decisions, but that we're just all part of a causal chain. Yet Allah still sends us to hell, and we can still experience that torture. So it makes it very difficult for me to rationalize.
So can we take it one point at a time? Because I think we have two different issues here, and then even these two issues are kind of secondary to the main discussion of whether there is a creator or not. So the first issue that you were talking about, sinful people and them being created for the hellfire. So you have a mistaken idea right there to begin with, which I'll explain. Second issue of Qadr.
Oh,
okay.
There you go.
So,
he's back.
There you are, silly Billy, you. So secondly, the issue of Qadr or predestination, I think you also didn't understand the Islamic concept of it. So we'll explain those. And don't let me forget, guys, on the screen that we make sure that we clarify those. So inshallah, your mind will be clear. But one thing before we begin. So, Tom, if we explain that there is a creator, are you willing today to then accept and become a Muslim, like sincerely, or are we just here to entertain?
If the burden of proof is met, and that, like, I won't have a choice. If all of a sudden Islam becomes the most rational explanation for reality, then you're forced to accept it. So
this is a good segue into your other misconceptions. You're never forced. That's the thing. Some people realize the truth of Islam but still don't accept it, because Allah gave us a choice, and that choice is even side. I don't know what time it is in Australia, but here in San Diego, it's daytime. You could go out to see the sun. It's obviously daytime, but you could go out and say, you know what, it's night. I don't accept that it's day, even though it clearly is, right? And that's the kind of thing you would be questioned for, and that's the kind of thing when people realize and deny, that's when they become people of the hellfire and so on.
But
So
I
you
don't
always
believe
have a choice.
could actually, in reality, I couldn't walk outside and say, and it's nighttime, and then say, I can say it's day, but I couldn't believe it's day if my eyes and my senses are showing me that it's clearly nighttime.
I'll tell you something. In the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is historically documented, we can discuss it. The time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the moon split, right? And people saw it, disbelievers who had asked for it, and they still denied it. And they said we saw it, right? So that's a different issue, right? But I'm just saying you have a choice. And if you are presented logical, clear, evidence-based proof, I just hope that you're going to then be open enough to then accept.
Yes, well, we're all here looking for truth. So if it appears to me that Islam is the truth, then I would accept it that it's the truth.
So let's take it back a step. Is there a creator or not? Because you said in your introduction email you're an anti-theist.
Correct.
I'm not even sure what does that even mean. Like you are.
Well, it means that
actively against belief or something.
I believe that holding beliefs that are not based on that are not in line with your observations and the facts that are available to you is immoral. So if you're holding a set of beliefs just because they make you feel good, I don't think that's moral. And I think that there are a bunch of elements of dogmatic religion that are quite bad for the future of humanity. There are some elements that are obviously quite useful and people are good for them, but there are definitely, I believe, that there are parts of dogmatic religions that are bad for humanity. So in that sense, I stand against it.
So you're anti-theist. All right, I got you. All right. So my question, and everybody else jump in as you like, where do we come from?
Well, we don't know that, and yes, there may be a God. So, like from my position, I'll say that so far that there is nothing that I see in reality that requires that there be a God. But
that's not what I asked.
Where did we come from? Well,
I didn't ask you if there's a God or not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, allow me to give my best. I don't. When I look at reality, as I said, I don't see the requirement for a God. I don't know that there was ever a beginning of reality. There may well have been reality. May have existed forever. There may never have been a creator. I'm not sure, but I don't believe that religion necessarily has the answer either. So just to say,
Tom, bro, you're going way past. I just asked you a very simple question. Where do we come from? I didn't ask you whether God existed or reality existed or whether religion is needed or not. I didn't ask you any of that. I just asked you because we all as human beings do observe and we see life, right? You see people living, you see people dying, you see children being born. So where did life come from? I mean, just a question. If you don't know, just say, I don't know.
Oh, well, I believe that there's a physical explanation for the evolution of life.
I want to hear it.
I think, I look at general abiogenesis, and it seems like all the properties required for life to evolve. We've got basic.
Tom, abiogenesis just means origin of life. You're being asked what's the origin of life. You just give a different name for origin of life.
Sure. I believe that chemical evolution or molecular evolution has been shown in principle, and that the basic steps for molecular life to evolve, like organic life from inorganics, can be demonstrated chemically. That doesn't necessarily mean
your answer then, because I mean, again, I want to always be very clear. Your answer is that life evolved out of nothing.
Well, it didn't evolve out of nothing. The laws of
Where
nature.
Did it evolve out of?
Well, it evolved out of a non-organic reality that already existed, and the laws of.
What's your proof for that?
Well, I think that it's been demonstrated. The pathways have been demonstrated.
No. Wait. Hold on. I work in the med device industry.
Sorry, I think a more pertinent question we should ask Tom at this point is, what is his source of truth What is his criteria for evidence and proof? Do you understand? So, for example, he seems, from what I can see, he takes testimony as a level of proof for things. So somebody tells him something that says, yeah, we evolved from this, such a thing, and that, and he accepts that testimony. So he does accept testimony as proof. Yeah. So sure. I think what's more pertinent for Tom is to understand his rationale as to how he discovers knowledge.
Yeah, well, I would look at the information that is available to me, all information that's available to you, and then you just try and draw the most rational conclusions based on the information that you have. Whether that
then you're drawing conclusions. You're not actually basing everything on observable fact, because as somebody who works in the scientific industry, I can tell you that there is no clinical trial or any kind of controlled lab test that has proven that from inorganic, non-living matter, life would evolve without any intervention. There's none, right? So that is not a fact in science. It's not even something we can test in a clinical trial. So that your idea that you're putting forward is not based on observable facts.
Well, I don't necessarily agree that that's
okay.
the case.
So can you cite me a clinical trial that has proved it?
Well, I don't. There is no one particular study that has shown that this is exactly what happened.
None.
But there are many different studies and many different points of evidence that all indicate the same thing. And there's no major.
Again, there's a difference between theory studies and observable facts. Meaning, can you, in a controlled environment, show that from inorganic, no life having matter, life can evolve without intervention? No study has ever proven that. If you have one, I'd love to see it.
But no study has also proven that that's impossible either, right? So where we are
again, so this is your. I don't know if you work in the scientific industry, but this is again a mistake. Studies are done to prove a hypothesis, not to disprove possibility. Okay.
Yeah, so, sure. I'll take that.
Do you understand? Do you know science well? I mean, are you?
Everybody, look. I try to.
I try. Do you understand how clinical studies work, right?
I do. Yes. Now.
Okay. So your comment then makes no sense, because you wouldn't do a clinical study so that something is impossible, because how would you control and demonstrate that? Rather, what you do is you have a theory, a hypothesis.
Okay. How about this? There are many different studies and different experiments that have shown that the pathways for molecular evolution are plausible and exist. We do not have the time or the money, I guess, to run an experiment that would require a large amount. It would be a massive experiment.
Tom, who's telling you this stuff? Tom, who's telling you this stuff?
Let me ask Tom one question before though.
Go on.
We do know that there's clinical studies that have been done. You can go to NIH.gov and look them up. That there's a minimum gene concept, meaning even parasitic bacterium single cell organisms need a minimum set of genes. Around 480 has been documented in clinical studies, without which they cannot function even at a parasite level. Okay, so that means life. Go ahead.
I'll just say, look, I tend to have a little bit of faith, although this is not my area.
A little bit of what?
Faith? Did you just say
faith? Oh, bro.
Faith in what?
The F word.
all of the information that I have, and this isn't exactly where I came to discuss this particular topic, although I do think it's interesting. But we like all of the information that I've had that I've been exposed to, all of the different studies, they all indicate that these pathways are plausible. We have not proven it. We have not disproven it.
Hold on, Tom, bro, you're trying to exit, but we're on a freeway, so you're going to stay with me, all right? Can't exit.
You've got loads of time, Tom. Don't worry.
Minimum gene concept. Do you know about it?
I do not know about it, but when you're talking about, ribozymes and self-replicating RNA, I'm not sure if that necessarily applies.
It does. It does. Like I said, and again, I would encourage for you to look this up after the show and all that. We have tested in controlled environments that even at a parasite bacteria level, if you fall under a minimum set of genes, which again, the study that I had looked at had 480, you would not be able to function even at a single cell organism. And go to the NIH.gov website.
That may be in the case where you have a ribosome and a DNA strand. But I don't know if it necessarily applies.
Tom, can I finish, please?
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. All right. So the way it works, right, is that we can test that when you fall below that, even in the most minute forms of life, they cannot function. They cannot replicate. They cannot grow. They cannot function. So it's called the minimum gene concept. Look it up. Really study it. Don't just Google it and try to, really study it. And you will find that your theory that from inorganic dead matter, a living cell that can function develops is impossible because it had to have had a minimum set of genes for it to function. So who designed that minimum set of genes?
Well, I have not studied this, but I will go back and I'll say I don't necessarily know that with self-replicating RNA, if that applies.
Even
I can understand
any living cell,
well,
even at a parasite bacterial level,
a ribosome is not a cell; it's just a molecule. Sure. So it's a
it has to become a cell, right? I mean, for it to become a living matter. How would a self-replicating RNA develop into a human being or into a animal? Those are all made up of cells, right?
No. Ribosomes.
People are not made up of cells?
People are, but ribosomes are what they call molecular life that exists. It's not a cell. It's effectively a ribosome that can act as both a store information and as an enzyme and can replicate itself.
Have you seen it be alive, independent of cellular life, in a clinical trial without origins from cellular life?
This borderlines between chemistry and life. Now we have what they call molecular life, which is a molecule that can exist and it can replicate itself when in the right conditions, when it has other sugars and things around it that it can work with and replicate itself. So it's part of the RNA world hypothesis. But again, it's not.
Let me just explain something to you, because I think you're again trying to exit the RNA or DNA or any of that form that we check today. We have taken it out of something that has a cell, right? Cellular life. So for you to think that RNA came before the cell, even if we were to give you that, it had to have developed into a cell for it to then develop into what we see as life today as humans and animals and so on. So that means at minimum, the first cell had to have had a 480 gene set. Who programmed that?
I can, even if I accept that it has a minimum 480 gene set.
It's not me. You can look it up. I mean, this is non-Muslim studies.
Quickly interject, Silly Billy. Sorry about that. If you don't mind, Sheikh, I'm hearing
go for it. Fadal Habibi.
Stuff happening. We're talking about cell. We're talking about RNA, and we're missing some basics here. You talk about a cell. Talking about cytoplasm, nucleus, and within the nucleus you have a DNA, which has sequences of trinucleotide, guanine, cytosine, adenosine, etc. And then you have DNA, which goes through the process of transcription, would have an RNA, and you replace adenine by uracil. And then that transcription later on gives translation, and eventually have protein synthesis. So you can't talk about RNA if we don't first talk about the nucleus or the cell and its origin. Where did this cell come from? The elements, the organic matter that you're talking about, whether it's carbon or whatever, the question should be asked is where they come from. You can appeal to the Big Bang Theory, any names you want. Some sort of explosion happened and started the universe. But the question is, that explosion was explosion of what? Those elements, where did they come from? What caused that energy? That nucleus that broke down and caused that massive hydrogen bonds breakage, like major atomic bomb. Think about it this way: you broke the hydrogen. The question is, where did these elements come from? That's the question. If you can tell us where did they come from, we can have maybe like a nice startup discussion.
Okay, so we're moving away from the genesis of life and now moving to where did matter come from?
Is that the genesis? It's beginning.
It is the genesis of life because we're taking it back. I mean, we're on the same exact thing, but we're looking at again, like Khalil beautifully explained, even if you're looking at RNAs, you're going so back to a cell. That's where you develop. So the first
Yeah.
cell and
Well,
had to
again,
develop with a minimum gene set, meaning that the first cell, for it to have functioned, it already had to have had that. So where did the building blocks come, and how did that develop? That's the question for you.
Yeah. And just before you answer, Tom, I just want to I want to explain what we're doing here, because I know you wanted to come on and talk about God. How can he throw people in hellfire and all that kind of stuff? We don't mind that. But what we always so say is, no disrespect, if you don't believe in a creator, there's no business talking about religion. All right. So we have to do this. And you make the claim you've seen no logical explanation for God. And what we're doing here, so for example, what the Sheikh is trying to demonstrate to you, that biology points to an intelligent agency behind the cell. Okay. Chemistry points to an intelligent agency through carbon, the formation of carbon. And physics points to the existence of an intelligent agency through obviously the fine tuning of the universe, right? So you ask for some kind of rational kind of reasoning as to why we believe in a creator, yeah? And what we're demonstrating to you is biology, chemistry, physics, all point to an intelligent agency. So to get the biology, we need the chemistry. To get the chemistry, we need the physics. Yeah. So what Khalil's done, because he's in the medical field, and you're a doctor, isn't it? Is that right, Khalil?
Yes.
MashaAllah. So he's hearing this thing about cells, and he's just thinking, look, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so let's take it back a little bit.
Well, to be honest, I'm not talking about cells. I'm talking about molecular life that existed before cells existed. So we're not talking
molecular. What does the word molecule mean?
So one second. Forgive me, sorry. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. So are you saying I'm gonna have to use this phrase now. Are you talking about the magic custard?
Well, yeah, I assume that's what you're. Yes, I assume.
This compound, carbon compound magic custard. Yeah, that's from it. Cells emerged, and then they randomly mutated and harnessed by natural selection.
No, the mutation began well before cells existed, according to the information
Say that again. Sorry.
The mutation existed
Mutation of what?
well before. The mutation of the molecules, or the
What do you mean before cell existed? What is a molecule without cell?
So this is what I'm saying. I don't think you understand what a molecule and what a cell is.
Yeah, I think
you do understand what are parts. I mean,
Do you know the
RNA
difference between atom and molecule, Billy?
A molecule is a group of atoms.
Right. And what is a cell?
A cell is it's basically it's got a peptide outer layer or fatty. It has a fatty outer layer, and then it
cytoplasm, membrane, nucleus. A nucleus has DNA sequence, and that's where you have this process that you're talking about. The change of the position of the trinucleotide will determine the phenotype of the organism, like whether you're gonna have blonde hair, black hair, whether you're gonna look like this and that. And this is what you're talking about. These changes have to come from the cell, so it's all part of the cellular.
I disagree with that. You can have molecular evolution before a cell exists. So the current RNA will.
Okay, fine. Where did it come from, though? Where do these things come from?
Let's just define some points here, Tom. Sorry. Is a molecule made up of cells?
No.
Or is a cell made up of molecules? I'm asking.
A cell is made up of molecules. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. The cell is made up of molecules.
Exactly.
But you can have molecular evolution without a cell.
What do you call that?
I just call it molecular life. It's like the borderline between
molecular what?
Molecular life,
Okay, so that's the question. Where does life come from? Where did the organism, whatever you want to call it, where did it come from?
Well, I see. It appears that it develops out of the laws of nature.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
The laws of nature. Wow,
what does that mean?
Well, my understanding of, I work in energy, right? So the world, the expansion of the universe, all the process of time, the arrow of time, everything is determined by an increase in entropy. That's how we know that we're moving forward in time, right? So energy moves from a highly dense state to a lower state. That's the increase of entropy. Now, life is fantastic at increasing entropy. We take in energy, we take in food, and we use it to create motion, and we radiate out a hell of a lot of infrared energy, and that's how you look for life on other planets.
Okay.
They look
Sorry,
for
Billy.
energy.
I apologize, Billy. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to say this. Look, I understand you want to discuss the process of evolution, which is basically just change over time.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to tell you here is change of what, and what is the beginning of all this? All we're asking is these elements, these organisms, these molecules that you're talking about. We're asking you, where do they come from? What had exploded to cause this Big Bang theory? What broke the bond, the hydrogen bonds? Whatever organism were there, the question is, where did they come from? For example, let me ask you a question. Would you ever believe if I told you that this phone was always here on my desk? Would you ever accept that statement?
No, I wouldn't accept that statement.
Why?
Because we understand what a phone is. We understand how you make a phone. That there is a product of that humans build it. So
Right.
for-
So let's apply the same principle, logical, coherent principle to the cosmos. Why do you believe that something always existed there?
Well, I don't believe that something always existed.
Very
but I
good.
believe
That means it has a beginning, right?
Did
it have a
well,
beginning?
No, I don't believe that it necessarily had a beginning. It may and may not have had a beginning. So I don't believe that we know. I don't
Where
believe
did it
that
come from?
I don't believe that we know, and I don't believe that anybody knows.
Right. Well, where did it come from, though?
Well, I don't know, and I don't think that anybody
Okay, so-
knows.
So I think that's where you came to what you should have just said in the beginning. You don't know.
Well, we moved from talking about you asked me about where I think life comes from, and I think I've got a reasonable physical
So once again,
explanation for that.
what we want to make sure is when we're discussing, because earlier you said you don't believe in what you cannot observe as researchable, testable facts, to faith in theories. So those are two different things. So I'm telling you,
I said that I accept testimony. I accept that all of the
you accept
information that I have,
testimony.
and then try and draw the most
Great.
rational conclusions.
So now, taking it back to things that we can test in a clinical trial or in a lab environment, we know a cell could not function, even at its more primitive forms, without a minimum set of genes. Who programmed the minimum set of genes for the first cell? It could not have just come by itself, because those genes would have to have existed before a cell existed. Do you understand?
Yeah, and with the
RNA
RNA world hypothesis, you just start with a very simple molecule that can self-replicate, and it'll continue.
Stop. Hold on. Where did that come from? Because again, we're talking about something you can test, observable facts. We can test that a cell cannot exist without minimum gene. We have clinical trials, prove it. You can go look it up yourself. Now, when you give an answer, I want an answer that you can test. Where did it come from?
Well, where everything came from, honestly, I just don't think we know, and I don't think that anybody knows.
Okay. So then that's a step that you don't know. Don't say nobody knows. Don't speak for others. Speak for yourself.
Well, I'm speaking from my belief that I believe that nobody else knows.
Okay, but then again, I believe I do know. So let's discuss that, right? That's why we're here. Now, if you don't know where life came from, can we at least say that there is intelligent design, right? Like Khalil gave an example. So we have a cell phone. If I told you this cell phone came from nothing, pieces of dust over billions of years just evolved to make this cell phone with the cameras, with the unlocking mechanisms, with Siri, with whatever functions that are there, email apps, none of that was programmed by anybody over trillions of years. Pieces of sand developed into this cell phone. Just be honest. Would you believe me?
Well, to a degree, that's actually it is.
You would
true.
believe me.
Well,
You
to
would
a
believe me
degree,
that without any intelligent design, without any
silly.
intervention, this came by itself. You would
Well,
believe me.
I take a reductionist approach to reality, so I don't believe that our consciousness is anything magical or mystical. So, in a sense, it is a physical evolution of ideas that came through humans. And yes, humans designed it and created it, but I don't believe that that's a metaphysical.
It came to humans. It came to humans.
let Asadullah come in at this point. Give us some crisp analysis so far.
Go ahead.
Salam.
He said enough. He said enough. He's intervening.
I just want to kind of go back to something you said earlier about it being immoral to believe things that aren't true. I believe that's what you said, and I agree with that.
To
sentiment.
believe things that you don't have any
But
evidence
for.
to support.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's just take that as true. Let's take the whole evolutionary paradigm as true. I think that's a good starting point. So here's my question. Evolutionary development is not teleological. It has no purpose behind it. The only thing that it seems to be preoccupied with, and I use that term loosely because, again, we can only use teleological language, is survival and spreading of its own DNA to others, right? So it doesn't seem like it would be concerned too much with truth or logic or anything else of the sort, or your epistemology for that matter. What it only cares about is moving into the next generation. So whether or not those beliefs are true or not doesn't seem to really matter. So my question to you is, especially given the fact that theists have ruled the world ever since the beginning of human civilization, and that anti-theists and atheists in general have not, and have always been the minority in the evolutionary paradigm, how is it that you are trying to ground your understanding of morality, and why is it that you value truth and logic when it doesn't seem to be working out for you too well?
Well, I do take a utilitarian viewpoint of morality, and so I do think that we can say that there are things that are moral within a framework, you know. And when you look at it from a utilitarian point of view, there are elements of religion that are that have utility, and that's why it exists. And and there's also an element of, if you take the more conspiracy theory type approach, of that religion is a great tool for controlling the masses and for social unity and things like that. So I would say that my take on it is that probably, yes, there is a utility for society, and I see things within religion like community, and even potentially the concept of God and the concepts of good and evil and the concepts of free will and personal responsibility that have utility, whether or not they're just illusions that don't exist, that only appear that way to us as we experience reality.
So if you don't mind me asking, I just want to clarify before you go further. I apologize. I just want to make sure that I'm getting this correct. Would you count that your morality under a certain framework, given you think it has utility, do you also believe that it's an illusion itself? Because I mean, it doesn't seem like, I mean, it's not really anything, right? It's just something that has kind of come up by society, correct?
Sure. Okay,
so at the same time, if you believe that my belief in God is the same thing, what's the problem?
Yeah, because it kind of sounds like you're sort of a moral nihilist that leans towards utilitarianism for pragmatic reasons, rather than that there is a genuine notion of good and evil.
Yeah, I don't believe that there is a genuine notion of good and evil, and I just think that I would be more of a utilitarian. So I'm sorry, Abdullah, I've actually forgotten your question.
Oh no, I said if your morality is similarly illusionary, right, and it's just for the sake of utility, why is it that you are opposed to theism?
Oh, because I think that I'm not opposed to all elements of theism, but things like where I started getting interested in religion is I grew up learning that human IQ was increasing generation after generation, and then there's become a point where our IQ has started to level off, and in certain parts, even certain parts of the world, IQ seems to be dropping. And unfortunately, reproduction rates and IQ are negatively correlated. So the more kids that you have at the moment, the generally people that have lower IQ have more kids. Seems to be the way that it's going. And for me, that poses a bit of a threat to reality, to humanity. You know, we think moving forward, I
was going to say then, how's it a threat to reality?
Pardon? A threat to
No, I
the
was just saying it was funny when you said reality. I was just just
So that's how I got involved. I'm thinking, okay, well, dumb people have more kids. I've got 4 kids, so I'm probably a pretty good example of that. But also, then you start looking at things like what correlates with IQ, and you start looking at dogmatic religion seems to have a negative impact. And so when I
don't know,
look
but
at
are these studies that you can cite? Dogmatic religion has a negative effect on IQ, or are you just making this
Yeah.
up?
no, there are many studies that say the same thing.
And are you no wait are these studies, do they take consideration which religion and
there are some
other yeah, so
Well,
I'd like
is
to
it a
see
book?
some of these.
I mean,
Or an essay.
there's a number of
Can you
issues
repeat that again? What
here.
was that statement you made about IQ and religion?
Well, there's a number of. Let's just assume that that's true. Still, I don't see how it kind of undermines the point. I mean, because
well, from the utility of having
first off, I mean, let me just be clear what I'm saying here. First off, evidence against that is I'm sitting here, right? So
I was gonna say, I
that's
mean, I
number
don't want to
one.
brag about IQ scores, but
Just kidding. Number
if you
two.
want to go there, we
That
can
was a
go there,
joke.
bro.
That's a joke. Number two, the other the problem is that
seriously,
I don't
yeah.
see how IQ is an issue, especially since we've sort of debunked this whole notion of IQ necessarily being tied to intelligence, various forms of intelligence.
Right.
But besides that point, the point that I made earlier, it's not just that there's some utility in religion. It just seems like civilizations cannot exist without it. Like there has absolutely never been an anti-theistic civilization that has ever existed, a non-theistic, something that doesn't believe in some sort of transcendent metaphysical force. It doesn't exist. It's never existed. And because, I mean, it doesn't
Facts.
function. Nothing comes from that. I mean, atheists have contributed to civilization. I'm not saying they haven't, but what I am saying is they never build anything. They've never built
As a
one.
society, yeah.
It's just never existed in human history. So why is evolution choosing to develop human beings who are believing in apparently this nonsense and low IQs, but for some reason the atheists are still in the background, while we're running the world? That doesn't make sense. Like that's
it kind of leads to this sort of double-edged problem, because either you say that evolution favors untruth, in which case we ask, well, how do you know that your faculties in which you judge religion are reliable at all if it gives rise to success via this untruth? Or you say that it is driven by truth, in which case you've got a problem trying to explain why religion was so successful.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily driven by truth or untruth, and I think that there is utility in the belief in God. I see people get derive pleasure from it. I see, community, and there's a bunch of elements about religion that have great utility. I can't really answer that question.
No,
Yeah,
but
you,
it is.
you get Abbas or Asadullah's question, right? So it's not about just having utility. According to you, if evolution chooses that which is the best for furthering the species, and since the beginning of mankind in recorded history, we have not seen an atheist or anti-theist or agnostic civilization run a society. Every one of them had some kind of a higher power belief. Then would you say that evolution favors such, not as a society, we could not function without it, or we have not seen that?
I don't know that we can say that we cannot function without it, but yeah, look, apparently there's
evidence-wise, we have not seen it, right?
Yeah, there are some.
The atheist ideas are not.
I'm sorry, have we lost him?
There have been after that, but they've never run a society.
Yeah, the other thing that's problematic too, Sheikh Osman, is like, as I mentioned earlier, is that it's not simply that there haven't been any atheistic civilizations, is that your whole concept of morality is really also an illusion and based in your own utility, and yet you have your opposition to something that likewise could be argued under your own worldview to be illusionary and have utility. So I don't see how you value your position above ours. I don't see it. So
jump on, Doctor. Jump on.
You want to see through a utilitarian viewpoint, you want to see humanity thrive, life thrive, right? And so the reason that I have issue with it is, again, when we talk about trying to optimize for IQ, which would then theoretically optimize humanity and success, then I see that hard dogmatic religion has a negative impact on that. So we would want to optimize for that, for the betterment of humanity, you know. But I'm not saying that there's no utility in religion at all, because clearly there is. So there is there are the elements of the atheist life that, the religious people have an advantage. They have better community. The act of worship and even believing in a God has psychological ramifications. Having a nihilist viewpoint, like I believe in determinism, and I don't believe that we have free will, but still holding the idea that we have personal responsibility will result in better outcomes, even though it might just be an illusion. So I'm just trying to, I think we should put forward what will optimize humanity moving forward.
So I have two questions about the IQ. Why do you believe that? Just before you go on, I have two questions. So the first one would be, how is it that optimizing IQ will lead to better successful societies, and what evidence is there to showcase that? And number two would be with regard to, actually, I forgot. No. Oh, no, wait. Was it that? I don't want to get what you said wrong. Oh goodness, I just slipped my mind.
While you're thinking of that, quickly, just a point, because again, you're kind of stating these studies as if they're facts. You're talking to a group of Muslims. Most of these studies that I have read have not judged on Islam. Rather, most of them have been conducted in Western countries, where predominantly you're talking about Christian belief, right? So if I were you, I would go back and check on that, because I have never seen a study. Hold on, let me finish. I mean, if there are some, can you post it or send it to me? Because everyone that I have seen, the majority of the belief that they're looking at is in Christianity, not Islam. So, and IQ, again, is just one form of test. It does not necessarily correlate into intelligence. Because if you're going to go there, I mean, if you want to share your last IQ test and your score, and I'm more than willing to share mine if you want to go there. And I'm pretty sure the panel here is going to outdo you. So don't try to make this as if this kind of fact. So,
well, no, it's about distribution. It's not, you can have.
Well, exactly. So when you're looking at a set number of people that are actual believers, for example, the majority of them being Christianity or Hinduism or something else, you cannot correlate that with all belief.
There are some studies that break it down on a religion by religion basis, and plenty of them.
Can you cite it? Can you give me a reference?
I don't have it with me right now, but I could look it up
afterwards.
Sure, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, the other thing that I just came up with the other question. Sorry. So the other thing was that you said that you don't believe in free will and you're a determinist, and so I don't want to be too reductionist in my assumptions here, because I understand that there is some nuance to that position. But just from what I understand in a simple manner, okay, if you lack free will and you're a determinist, what's the point of this conversation?
What's the point of anything? Yeah, look, I understand that, and even you could say, what's the point of taking any personal responsibility? What's the point of trying in life? But you can also make that same statement if you take the Islamic point of view, where Allah wills everything. It's like, well, if everything's willed and everything's written for me, why try? It's a similar problem.
Just before you answer that, Sheikh, I can see you get ready to jump onto that. I just want to respond to what Asadullah said as well, and respond to the comment section at the same time. Why we're having this conversation? Because some people in the comment section are saying, Tom, that you're not really listening. It's not going in, right? What I would say to them is, this is a position that a lot of people in the world are holding, what you've got. And maybe it may not go in with you, but there are people watching who this will resonate with and make them think and reflect and contemplate. So although we're addressing you, Tom, and we're hoping we can change your position, but if you're taking this position that everything's pointless kind of flex. And again, this is responding to the comment section. Just relax in the comment section. Don't worry. Tom is here. Yeah, he's a nice guy. He's willing to have his mind changed. But even if his mind isn't changed, there are plenty of people who are watching who may be affected by what's being said here. So just have patience, calm down in the comment section a little bit on Tom. It's a lot of information Tom's taking in. Anyway, now the Sheikh can jump all over his latest claim.
No. So I mean, there were a couple of points you made earlier which I wanted to address, and this is one of them. So I'm glad you got to it. I don't want to take away from Absullah's train of thought, but just one comment first. If you believe this phone developed by itself without any intelligent design, evolved by itself without any intervention from anybody using their own intelligence, I seriously doubt your IQ score. First,
Well, I hope you understood what I actually was trying to say when I said that. Like, I was saying that human intelligence is a physical
thank you.
thing.
So wait. So you do believe it took some form of intelligent design to design this phone, right?
Well, the idea, if you take a fully materialistic viewpoint, then intelligence, you could say that that's just
You're running from the question. To be
So,
honest with
but-
you, right?
yeah. Look,
Look, Tom. We're having a
I'm
just
saying
have a
take-
straight conversation. Don't hide behind concepts and things. Do you
No,
believe this phone, without any intervention, developed by itself into its current form? Yes or no?
no, not
Thank you.
just the phone by itself.
Okay.
Obviously, not.
Look. Hold on. No, look. Take a minute, Tom. Take it easy. Good. You. That's a good, honest answer. I appreciate the honesty. I appreciate the conversation. Now, I would say, and we have Dr. Khalil and we have Asadullah and Yusuf here, who are more knowledgeable than me. They can correct me if I'm wrong. I would say the human body, as it stands, is more complicated, more complex, has greater functionality than this phone. Would you guys agree?
100%.
Okay. So, Tom, I find it illogical that you believe that this phone cannot come by itself, but the human came by itself. That is against basic human logic.
Well, if we're taking the full materialistic viewpoint, then
Look,
I would
just
say
be straight. Don't hide
I'm-
behind concept. Just be
I'm
straight.
not
Look,
hiding. I'm
is
being
the
trying to be
human
clear.
body more complex or less than a phone?
It's more complex than a phone.
So would it not be logical then, since you didn't see this phone being made, this particular phone, wouldn't you say it's more logical for you to believe that the human had some kind of intelligent design that designed it than for you to believe a phone requires intelligent design? Wouldn't that be
I don't-
more logical?
I do not believe so, no. And if you let me
How is
explain,
that?
I'll
Go
explain. So when I was saying that the phone evolved, right, then I believe that biology is just a physical process and that ideas are also physical processes that exist in the mind.
Khalil,
Right?
go ahead, man. I see you.
So they're physical things that actually exist. And that the information that took to build a phone has obviously, those ideas have evolved within humanity. You can see these ideas developing over time, you know. So to a degree, you could say, if you're taking the viewpoint that it is all physical, that there is no separation of body and mind or brain and mind, that it is all just part of the same physical process. So the evolution of biology, the evolution of technology, the evolution of ideas and society is just all an extension of the exact same physical process. So that's if you're taking the materialistic thing. So I don't see that. No, that I don't see any requirement for a creator to draw a more logical conclusion. No.
Khalil, go ahead, man. I see you.
I don't even know where to begin, to be honest with you. I mean, there's so many things to cover here. Like, you brought a great point, Sheikh Uthman, which is this design, right? Let's not even talk about the joints, you know, your MCL, your ACL, and how you articulate joint. You can just talk about, for example, when you eat food, you know, what tells your stomach lining or cells there to produce hydrogen ions, acid, to break down the food? What mechanism? What designed? How do you detect there's food there for it to produce it? How does your body detect glucose level, and your beta cells from the pancreas produce insulin as a taxi driver to take it to the cell to go through the Krebs cycle to produce ATP? I mean, the design is, I mean, in the medical community, we're still struggling to find what caused this, what triggers this. What people say is that, well, your body evolved. Well, here's the question. If your body evolved, that means the first person didn't have those qualities. If they didn't have those qualities, they couldn't have survived.
Could
to
not
make
have
it to
survived.
us. So this is like a scientific and a philosophical topic, and we can be here forever. But I really want to bring it back to just one quick thing. You mentioned something about IQ and theology. I mean, Islam absolutely demolishes this idea because you look at the golden ages of Islam, which is triggered by the religion of Islam. Before that, people were like literally like living in like nothing, desert, just like burying their kids, daughters, etc. But you have this unbelievable revolution when you have Ibn Haytham, who discovered and developed the scientific theory, which he tried to articulate, but not quite. And then you have, for example, I'm looking at Al-Qanun fi al-Tibb, the Canon of Medicine by Ibn Sina. I'm looking at Kitab Tasrif by Zahrawi, which if you Google today, you'll find that he is the father of modern surgery. The Canon of Medicine was used in Europe as the official medical textbook for 450 years. In order for you to become a physician in Europe, you had to go through the Canon of Medicine. It was the medical textbook. This is admitted and agreed upon by all scholars, all scientists, all doctors in the community, scientific community. They give him credit. He's the father of modern medicine. Zahrawi is the father of modern surgery. Discovered over 300 tools that we still use today in the OR. The only difference is that you have a wire and you have a battery. So, and algorithm from Al-Khwarizmi, algebra, that you have binary numbers that we have in this conversation today. We have
Ayn al-Jazari, the father of robotic.
the list is endless, and these people, they started the book by Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa salatu wassalam ala Rasulullah. These people literally would have thought of the Quran first before they moved on to anything. So this idea of IQ and theology, absolutely, with all due respect, I mean, it's not even worth to be discussing. I think we should just bring it back to what the Sheikh brought earlier, which is, look, where does this all day come from? If you can tell us where the first cell, molecule, whatever you want to call it, whatever elements, the carbon, whatever it is, where did it come from? If you don't have the answer, you must agree, like you said, this phone can't just be here by itself, or anything can't be here by itself.
I don't think that's
something that put it there, right? And if you agree with this simple logic that things just don't happen but on their own, they must be placed by another intelligence, another entity. You don't have to call it God. I know atheists and agnostics have this sensitive issue with the word God, and I believe this is because of the concept of God that was instilled by Christian doctrine, that there is this man with white beard up there, God of wrath, and this Zeus thing. It's not how God is in Islam, Silly Billy. Maybe you should ask us about what is God in Islam. Let the Sheikh probably give you an understanding of what is this concept of the first cause initiator. Maybe we can have a better discussion than this back and forth, to be honest with you, about evolution and about these things. This is my opinion.
Well,
Should we let Tom move on to his reservations about Islam? Because he made I'll tell you what Tom's claims are. Sorry, Tom, I'm going to have to expose you a little bit, if you don't mind.
Well, I mean,
all right, so
I only disagree with Khalil on one thing.
Go on.
Is that you mentioned beta cells, right? You mentioned beta cells?
Yes, in pancreas.
No. We don't have beta. We have alpha cells. Okay. All right, that's a joke. Khalil, come on. I can't even. I don't have a good audience today.
No, actually,
I think he froze.
Oh, okay.
That was really bad timing. Freeze. Like dead man. Tumbleweed.
That was the best face to freeze on as well.
Both hormones in pancreas. But anyway, sorry.
You looked so unamused, Khalil, with your frozen face.
I'm like, wait a second.
Khalil's like, I'm a doctor. Come on, guys.
Right. So let's move Tom on a little bit, because he's already said he's a hard determinist anyway. So this is his claim, and we'll let him move on to religion. Okay. I'm yet to encounter any logical argument that indicates that a God exists. We've dealt with that. Or that any dogmatic religion is logically sound. I am open-minded, but currently the amount of contradiction that can be found in religion and Islam seems utterly insurmountable. I'm very confident with my rationale, and that observable reality is in conflict with the concept of Abrahamic personal, omnipotent, omnipresent God, and beyond that some Islamic teachings are self-contradictory. But I'm also open to changing my position when presented with new information. So I think now he should give us an education in Islam.
Well, I mean, Tom, just before you educate us, what have you studied from Islam?
What have I studied from Islam?
Yeah, I mean, like which university, which degree, ijaza, sanad, how's your Arabic, tafsir books, hadith?
Yeah, no Arabic. So it's I've read the Quran. I've been looking
cover to cover,
but not.
Wow.
I haven't sat down and studied each individual verse and taken it apart. So fairly superficial level of knowledge, But
those are pretty bold claims for somebody with superficial knowledge, don't you think?
Well, perhaps maybe you can. We can find out.
Cool. Let's go for it.
So my issue.
Go ahead.
Okay, so where I think that the contradiction lies is where we started, saying that we've got this, and the conversation I had with Yusuf was that you've got this God claiming to be the most merciful, yet he's creating people directly for the hellfire, and the vast majority of humans.
Wait, hold on. That's incorrect. So you're saying that God created people and directly threw them in the hellfire?
Not directly through them in hellfire. He created them for the hellfire, and it says.
Christian
What do you mean he created them for the hellfire? Did they have a choice in their actions?
This is where the issue comes in. Do they have a choice in their actions? If you've got a situation,
are you asking a question or are you making a comment?
Both. Well, let me frame it.
Well, there can't be both. It's got to be one or the other, right? A comment doesn't roll on a response. A question is when you're asking when you don't know.
All right, it's a question. Okay, so we've got.
Okay, good. So if you have a question, let me answer your question.
Can I ask the question then?
Oh, I thought that was the question. No?
No. So the question that I have is we've got Allah willing everything into existence, right? He's written all, and he's written everything before creation. So that obviously includes sin. It includes evil. He's the creator of everything. Yet we still have the concept of free will. Now, that's the major contradiction that I think that we see is that.
I got you,
what's the contradiction?
That we've got Allah willing everything, creating everything, and even the calamities within inside us are being willed by Allah, and yet we're claiming that we have free will. And
what do you mean by willed? What do you mean by willed?
Are you done with your question?
Brought into existence, I'd say.
Brought into existence.
Yeah, so I think this is where your confusion comes in, right?
Yeah, this is why the Sheikh asked you, where have you studied? Because you seem to have this in-depth knowledge about what Islam teaches and the nature of creation and free will and all of these things. Where have you studied these things?
Well, I've said that I have a relatively superficial.
Yeah, we know that. But your claims are not superficial. You're actually telling us our religion. So I'm trying to understand who taught you this.
Okay, well, you can tell me if I'm incorrect.
No. You're teaching us. No. I want to know. You're teaching us about our religion. You're telling us things that are facts in our religion, and I'm just trying to ascertain where you get the information from.
Oh, as many sources as I possibly can.
So give me. So, are they Muslim sources? Islamic sources?
In some cases, yes. In some cases,
so where have you got this idea of your concept of free will and everything being willed and all this kind of stuff? Where are you getting this from?
Well, I've had some discussions with different imams. I've done some reading. I've watched a lot of YouTube. So, that's probably where that comes from.
Okay. Because, people like the Sheikh have studied the actual Islamic scriptures.
That's a great opportunity for him to set it straight. Then
school you is the word I would use.
I just wanted to get the question first. Your question, just so if I can paraphrase and understand, is how can Allah have predetermined what's going to happen, and then us still have free will to make choices and be held accountable? Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay, good. So it's very easy, and again, this is why I always suggest people to study actually with scholars and things, because this is a very an ABC issue in Islam. So Allah is the most knowledgeable, meaning His knowledge does not increase or decrease, but that does not mean that He forces His creation to do good and evil. Okay, this is where your disconnect happens, because you're thinking from a very human perspective, meaning that if I, as a human being, will something on somebody, that means I force them, and that is the only way that I would know what they will do. That's the only way I would predetermine, is by forcing them. But that is not the concept with our Creator. Allah has knowledge of what will happen, what has happened, what is happening, what could have happened, what didn't happen. That is a perfect knowledge of Allah. He is the Creator. He is the one that made everything. He's above us in our intelligence and our knowledge. That does not mean, pay attention now, that does not mean you're like a robot that is carrying out certain orders, because you were given choices in certain things. Okay, you're with me? Certain things you're not. For example, you were born, I'm assuming, in Australia. You didn't have a choice in that. So Allah will not put you in heaven or hell or punish you for being born in Australia or America or Saudi or wherever else, because you had no choice. Whatever color eyes you have, whatever color hair you have, whatever health issues you have, whether you can see or not see at birth, none of those are your choices. So you will not be held accountable for that. In fact, if you're lacking any facility, meaning if you don't have the ability to pray standing, then Allah, out of His mercy, doesn't require that from you. And He forgives you and gives you the reward as if you did it that way. But then there are issues where you have a choice. You, Tom, Silly Billy, have a choice to either submit your will to your Creator, accept the evidences, and follow what He has ordained, or you have a choice not to, even when you see it to be true. There, you will be held accountable. Hold on, let me finish. There, you will be held accountable. Now, Allah knows before what's going to happen, but that is the knowledge of Allah. That doesn't mean He forces it. That doesn't mean that He makes you. This is the disconnect out of the human limited thought process that we have. Allah knows everything, but He doesn't force it. You will be held accountable for your choices that you had the free will to choose.
So can I do anything different to what Allah has written on His tablet?
Again, so this is where you're misunderstanding again. What Allah had written is from the knowledge of Allah. There is nothing new to the knowledge of Allah. That is
So
the knowledge of Allah.
I physically cannot do anything different to what He has written.
Let me finish. Again, because you're confusing force and foresight. Okay? I'll give you a very human concept just because I want to open your mind. Okay? I'm a father. You have 4 kids, you said. So you're a father. Sometimes your child is playing somewhere, doing something, and because of the limited amount of knowledge we have as parents, we know what's going to happen. We know playing on the edge, they're going to fall. We know they're going to start fighting with each other. Not that you force them, but from your limited knowledge, you know that's going to happen. So you tell them, hey, I know this is going to happen, stop, right? And even though they make the choice to continue playing or not, what you thought would happen happens because of your knowledge. Now, that's a very limited concept to us as humans, but you didn't force your child, right?
I would say that's
what you predicted
not
happen.
I don't believe that that's a good analogy at all, because
I'm not, if you paid attention to it.
But I'm not the creator, even though I've had
exactly.
a child.
That's the point.
I'm not the
point
creator.
that you are not the creator, but because you have a little bit of more experience and knowledge than the child, you know what that's going to end up in that situation because of your limited knowledge. Now, when you take the creator, that's a whole different level.
It is a whole different level.
You
So let's
cannot
talk about
compare the
responsibility for a
knowledge
second.
of Allah. You're not paying attention to the analogy. See, you just want to
think,
debate now.
I think, Silly Billy, maybe like you just listen to what the Sheikh is saying. He's investing and putting time to try and explain to you. And Sheikh, after you, if you don't mind, I want to just add something on what you said. Similar.
Go ahead. No, I'm good. Look, the example is very clear. Anybody with an open mind and open heart that wants to accept it, it's very clear. Look, I'm giving you a very limited human example for a great concept, but Allah put these examples for us to see. As a parent, you know sometimes what's going to happen with your child because of your knowledge and experience, even though you are not all powerful like Allah. Right? But you know, I can tell you that if my son goes to this place with this person, it's going to be a fight. Right? I can just tell you from experience and knowledge and so on. Now, didn't force him, but he will make those choices. But I know because of my knowledge, right? This is a very human example. But now imagine the creator. He knows everything, but he doesn't force it. You have a choice. You have a choice to pray or not pray. You have a choice to fast or not fast. That is the greatness of Allah, that He knows what will happen. But it does not mean that He forces it on you.
Okay. Now,
Go ahead, Khalil.
my response to that.
Just okay. So, Bill, I just want to add the similar point, right? Think about a classroom, right? And there is a professor there, right? A professor has been doing this for 20, 30 years, right? PhD in the field. He's had tons of classes, graduates. He knows exactly the quality of the students. He's been with his students for about 8 months. He just knows that this person is an A student. This person, no matter what, is not going to pass C. They're not C+. They just don't know the subject matter. But he's not influenced you. Now, this is the point. This is the point, Silly Billy. You, as a student, well, for example, I'm a student. You're the teacher, right? You're telling me to study. You're giving me, think about it like God sending prophets and all, right? Messengers. But what you're doing, you're telling me, look, you need to study, all right? The finals are coming up. Now it's up to me what I'm going to do. I can either play video games or I can study for the test. But because you know me for a while, right? For 8 months, and you've had typical, similar type of personalities and students, you get an idea. You could bring your specificity and sensitivity of the test will be about 98%. You're pretty sure this many people gonna pass. This kid's definitely getting an A. I just know this kid is an A. Why? Because their ethics I'm not affecting him. Everyone, the whole class is getting the same message from me. Guys, study for your final. Guys, study for your final. But I'm observing as a professor and seeing these people, they put in the work. These people just have higher IQ, whatever you want. So the fact that the professor is predicting and getting a high specificity and sensitivity of his prediction, that doesn't mean he's altering the experiment. You have full choice to go either play video games or to study. But because of my experience as a professor, right, and wisdom, 30 years in the field, I'm able to make that prediction. And this is why experts even do the stock market and other things. They're not affecting the market, but they give in intellectual. No, this is the point. Now apply this to whom we call the most wise, all knowledgeable. So it's a very simple thing. Don't confuse things. It's like two different things. A matrix, one thing outside time and space, observing the experiment. That's it.
Yeah.
Clear
Oh, that's okay.
as day.
Well, no, I think that's both examples are logically flawed. To be honest, I think that
What's the flaw? What's the flaw?
I know what he's
Well,
coming from.
the flaw is that the teacher is not the creator. The teacher has not the test. So we take a look at say that.
I think the teacher did write the test, right?
Well, the
He
teacher
teaches
writes
the class. He's in
but he-
control of the classroom.
Yes, but he didn't
Yeah.
create the students, and he doesn't know every single thought.
Well, I can't give another example because we don't have another example of an
Well,
entity creating things.
But that was
No,
the exact
it
point.
seems
That these
illogical.
are
This-
these are human examples of concepts. Now you have to take it up to a creator level. But you
And when
do
you do that, it
understand what
becomes illogical.
Khalil is saying, right?
Well,
Do you
I-
understand
I
that
understand what
concept
he's
or
saying.
no?
But I understand what he's saying, but I feel that it's completely illogical when you take a look at God as all-knowing, all-powerful, right? He is not the teacher; he is the creator. So
Yeah, we know
he's
that.
essentially-
Exactly.
Yeah,
We
so
know the
he's
point.
essentially he's created this test, right? Which is redundant because he knows the result of the test. So
No.
How does he?
Who
One
knows
second,
the
one
results?
second.
Who knows the
So
results?
again,
One second.
So this is the problem, right? So Khalil said a beautiful example about his
How
class.
does he
Now,
know the
when
result
that
of the test?
when that teacher sits in that class and through his knowledge and experience, the limited human knowledge and experience, knows the student's going to fail, is it redundant for him to give the test to the student? Thank you.
No, I don't believe it's redundant for him to give the test to the student. But
Exactly.
he's not God. He's not God.
He's
So-
not. That's not the
I believe that
That's the whole point. Wait, Billy, silly Billy. That is the whole point because we don't have gods like Zeus and I don't know what. And if you look, see, this is Zeus and this is another god. This is Thor. This is we believe it is only one God, one founder, one initiator, right? So since there is no other entity like him, His Majesty, Subhanahu wa Taala, we're giving
Subhanahu
you
wa ta'ala.
a ridiculous human-like example. Like it's called an analogy. Now use your intellect, an IQ, which you claimed, to try to arrive to apply the same principle to someone who has unlimited knowledge.
So allow me to do this then. If I what I think
You're
would be-
asking me, just one second, but think about this. You're asking me, you're saying the teacher is not God. So you're saying to me, you have to give me another God. Well, I can't because there's only one God.
Well, no, I'll give you an analogy which I feel is a bit more
Before you go into
accurate.
refutation mode, Silly Billy, do you understand what Khalil and my example demonstrated? Do you understand that the teacher knows the outcome to a certainty due to experience and knowledge, even though it's limited, without forcing the outcome? Do you understand
I do.
that concept?
I do.
Okay.
But where
So
I
now
think
just
that
take that.
analogy
Hold
falls
on. Take a deep breath. Relax. So you do understand that concept exists, where you can know what will happen without forcing it.
Yes, I understand that.
Okay. Now take that to a greater level, right? Meaning Allah knows what will happen, but Allah does not force it upon you. That's it.
Well,
Your-
this is
your
where
whole thing is
I actually
done.
feel. No,
dumb.
I don't think so. This is where I think that the analogy falls apart when you take it to the higher level. So what I think a better analogy, because I have heard this response to this problem before, and what I think possibly a better analogy would be, rather than a teacher and students, would be rather a creator, somebody who creates robots, right? So I create robots. That's not it.
That is not a good analogy.
I create robots.
Again,
right?
if you asked us for analogy, then let deal with our analogy. Don't give us an analogy.
Why
for
did you
us.
ask us?
Thank you. Yeah. I mean,
because
keep your analogy to yourself. If you ask us to explain a concept, because you've been through that analogy, that's why you want to take it there. But we're not going to let you, because that's not something we presented. If you're asking our analogy for an Islamic concept, then deal with what we presented. Don't deal
I
with somebody
believe
else.
your analogy does not make sense.
Do you
Because-
mind? I think
ahead,
if we
Asadullah.
let him
Or, go
make
ahead,
the analogy, I think we can make a good point with it, to be honest, because it's usually this very example that I bring up to say why there is a problem with the way people think about this whole free will determinism thing. Is that they try to make a comparison between how God creates with how a human creates, and so when they're looking at the whole free will versus determinism thing, they're looking at it like, if we were to create a robot and make the robot do something, that is the same way that Allah creates, and that's not how Allah creates at all. Like we're creating something out of already existing things, and we then produce mechanisms that we can understand to a certain degree. And so you can see in that, and then as well, the robot itself has no sense of consciousness. It has no will. It has no, obviously you're someone who doesn't necessarily even think that we have will at all, but under the assumption that will does exist, the robot doesn't have that. Whereas Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he does exist, he's the greatest example of a being with will. He's an independent being. There is nothing acting upon him. Whenever he does something, he's doing it of his own accord. And when he creates, it's not like we create. His way of creating isn't the same way as the way we would build a robot and make it do something. No, Allah tells us in the Quran that he does not wrong us, but we wrong ourselves. So the Islamic narrative, which you're saying here is the contradiction, the Islamic narrative is quite clear that Allah does create us with the ability to make a choice, because obviously we're going through an internal critique here. And the scripture does put this forward, that it is us that are responsible for the things that we do. If I do a bad thing, I am worthy to be reprimanded for that. If I do a good thing, then I'm worthy of being thanked for that kind of thing. It's a hadith, Sheikh, or a verse from the Quran that says, "Those who are not thankful to the people are not thankful to Allah." So so there's a notion that people are responsible for the things that they do, and the way Allah creates is not like the way a human creates a robot. It's not out of already existing matter that you've got to configure in a certain way and then you force it to do a particular thing. No, Allah creates us with a will. And for you to say that Allah is forcing us, you would have to explain what this will is and explain how that mechanism itself is equivalent to the way that a human being would create a robot, for example. I'm saying that you don't know that it is equivalent to the way that a human, and I would say it necessarily, if they do exist, if Allah does exist and he does create the way he creates, that it would necessarily not be the way similar to how a human creates a robot.
Oh yeah, I would agree that the creation would be slightly different, but I still believe that the concept's the same. If you take a deterministic viewpoint, then our will and our thoughts are just parts of the physical process that Allah knew before creation, right? So
you're asking me to choose a deterministic viewpoint.
I'm
For
sorry.
a moment.
See, again, you're putting your viewpoint on us now.
That's
Our
what he's doing.
viewpoint we clarified already, right? Which is that Allah knows but does not force it upon you. You have a choice.
No, we don't. Well, we don't really. This
is why the robot analogy is not something we put forward here. Khalil's example, my example, again showed the child or the student has choice.
No, but I don't.
Somebody with knowledge and experience knows what they will do, and that's a limited human example. Obviously, amazing great example
Yeah.
of the great creator.
Can I avoid analogies? Can I just deal with the elephant in the room?
Go for it.
Yeah, Tom. So I'm trying to understand this contradiction of Allah being merciful and at the same time punishing someone when, yeah. So the question is, how does Allah know if somebody's going to go to the hellfire?
Are you asking me that? I don't know. Didn't he
Well,
write
yeah,
it
I'm
down?
asking you. I'm asking you.
He wrote it. His magic pen wrote it on a tablet.
No, his
Before-
magic pen wrote what on the tablet?
Everything.
No, yeah, but what though?
I got no idea.
Well, so so this is the problem.
Magic pen,
This is
wow.
why I've never had a problem with this issue, and it puzzles me when people comment. Oh, how can Allah be all knowing? And then like for example, why can't you do something different to what Allah knows you're going to do? Why can't you do something different?
Well, I don't know. Maybe you can add, because to me that seems like, if we go back to the robot analogy, that effectively
No.
we've passed everything out.
Forget the bloody analogy. Deal with the elephant in the room. Why can't you do something different to what Allah knows you're going to do?
Because I don't have free will.
No, because that's what you're going to do.
Which
Because
I
that's
think
what you
we don't have free will.
Allah knows it. So Allah's knowledge is your actions. So whatever choices you make, Allah knows whatever choice you're going to make. If you're going to go left, you're going to go right. Allah knows you go left.
So are you
Okay.
saying that free will is the ability to have done otherwise? Basically.
He thinks knowing the outcome of somebody's actions means you've determined that action, and I just do not get that logically.
Yeah,
If you're
That's
not going to
illogical.
do
If I
something,
can respond to Hamza, please.
please do.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just the knowledge, it's by itself, does not determine that free will cannot exist. But
Right.
if I roll, just so if I'm going to take the position of God for a second, and I'm rolling a ball down an intricate set of pipes, and I know that at the bottom of those pipes there's somebody's car, and this rock's going to fall out and it's going to hit the car. Now I roll it down the pipe. My view of consciousness is basically, yes, we've got these different pipes with different forks, but essentially it's a physical process that just works its way down. Now I know that which pipe is going to come out at the end, and I know it's going to hit that person's car, but I'm claiming that the ball itself is the one that's responsible for hitting the car.
Yeah, but the pods don't have consciousness.
Stop the analogy.
Exactly.
I'll make it easy
They
for
don't have
you.
consciousness. You can't use elements that don't have
One second,
consciousness
one second, Khalil.
and then use them.
I don't believe.
1 second, Khalil. Tom. God created you. Yes. He's seen your life. He knows what you're going to do. He knows if you're going to die a Muslim or not. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Are you the one who will decide whether you're a Muslim or not?
I don't believe so. No.
You don't believe so. Why not?
Well, in order for me to become a Muslim, it must make sense. It must be rational, right?
Forget that. I didn't say that, did I? I'm not asking
No,
you,
you're not getting
oh,
the
do you
point.
believe Islam is true? I'm saying when you die, it might take you 20 years to come to the truth. Who knows? Or you might never come to the truth. Who knows? The
Right.
point here is
Okay,
this.
exactly.
Let's establish one thing. You're either going to die as a non-Muslim or as a Muslim. Do you accept that?
Sure.
Right. And does Allah know whether you're going to die as a Muslim or a non-Muslim?
Yes.
Right. And if you live your life rejecting Islam and die as a non-Muslim, and Allah knows that, did you have free will?
I don't believe that logically follows. No.
Why? Why not?
Why not?
Well, I can't
This
choose
is
to
your
become a
problem
Muslim.
because again,
What do you mean you can't choose?
you're
What about
equating-
calling the show? Did you call the show? Who chose to call the show?
Khalil, sorry. I think we have to let Tom go here at this point.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Hold on. Let
Because
Asadullah
you're
speak.
not
I know Asadullah's
demonstrating
been
in any
patient, man.
part of this whole process, Tom. You've showed no logic. And now you're trying to make claims that are illogical. I'm really saddened by it. This level of arrogance of all of a sudden that you've gone from I don't know and everything's this and all of a sudden when people are presenting alternate views to you, right? Whether you die as a Muslim is up to you, mate. Whether
I
you
don't
choose
believe
to
that that's
accept
the case.
Islam
No.
or
But
not.
This is actually a good point. Can I make a good point here, right? And so this is actually where my thinking about Islam really kicked off. That's right. That okay. Well, we've got people. I think about my grandparents, non-Muslims, lovely people, died non-Muslims. Right? They're in hell, according to you guys. So
Not necessarily.
Who's
Not
doing hell?
necessarily.
Well, not necessarily. Okay, well, I'll retract that.
Just one second, silly. Just one step at a time. So we're not Christians. We don't believe that if you don't believe that Jesus Christ died for your sins and you baptized, you end up in hell. We don't believe that. We don't believe that you're doomed to hell, that the gates of heaven are closed because you carry the original sin. We don't believe that stuff.
No, I misspoke. You are right. I apologize about that.
Yeah, so we don't believe that. We believe Allah is just and will treat you based on
No,
the elements and the
Khalil, we
messages.
believe Allah is the most merciful. The irony.
Yeah, so
Well,
Subhanallah.
the irony. This, and
Guys,
this,
can we let Asadullah speak? I know he's been patient, mashallah. Go ahead, bro.
Hi. So, I think some of the stuff was already kind of stated, but I kind of want to go over what I think the main issue is. Yeah, I see that the difference here you're trying to make is that because Allah or God creates something, therefore, and knows what the person's going to do, therefore they didn't really have a choice in what they did, right? Because before creating them, he knew their outcomes. So to you, it's as though he created them in that fashion to produce those outcomes, right? So
well, he could have changed it if he wanted to, obviously.
could have changed, yeah, sure. He could have done a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
So this whole thing about like robots too, I think it's interesting. And before I give you kind of like my explanation, I just want to say that I don't believe in absolute free will either. I mean, I believe that there's free will, but I don't believe that. Like, for example, I don't believe like I can just flap my arms and fly, because right, there are limitations, right? There are certain choices that I can only make within my given circumstance, within my own abilities, right? So there is a lot of constraints to choice, but without constraints, there really isn't any choice, to be frank. I know that sounds kind of odd, but because, I mean, to some degree, there have to be constraints for us to even define what choice is, right? So, like, for example, just to give you a quick analogy, let's say I go to the ice cream shop, and I don't know in the very moment, like, what flavor I want, and then I decide that I want butter pecan because I had chocolate a week ago, and I just want something different, right? So, and let's say I got to the ice cream shop at 5 p.m. I was a little late. And I was going to get there. I wanted to get there at 4:45, but there was traffic and stuff, right? So there's some constraints there and some influences behind my choice. But I'm still making a choice within those constraints, and with or without a God, that situation would have never changed. So what I'm trying to say is this, like, even in the concept of robots, I thought it was interesting that everyone brought up robots. But with machine learning, for example, you can program something to an extent where it chooses things based on its circumstance, based where you put it, right? It's not necessarily forced per se. It depends on what context you put the machine learning in, right? That it makes certain decisions. So, like I said, I have a more nuanced perception here of free will, and I do believe there are some constraints, but I do think it's a non sequitur when you say because God created something and knows what they're going to do, that therefore they were forced to do it. I don't think there's a connection there. And Hamza, I think, pointed out very clearly, the reason that God knows is because the choice was made. Whereas it's not, he doesn't know because he told the guy, or he's like, okay, you're going to do this. Like, this is what's going to happen, No, he knows the future, right? And when you know, like, for example, let's take out the whole creator thing. You think a creator thing is essential. I don't think it is. If I knew the future, it doesn't mean I forced somebody. Even if I created that person and I still know the future. See, I don't think there's a connection here between creating and not creating. Another example, and this is somewhat similar to what they said. Let's say I read somebody's text message on their cell phone. They say, I'm going to the grocery store at 2 p.m. And I call them and they're at the grocery store at 2 p.m. And I knew they were going there because of what I read. I didn't force them to do it. Now you can say, well, you didn't create that person. Who cares? Let's say I did create that person. I'm just saying this for a thought process, right? And I knew that they were going to the grocery store at 2 p.m. I didn't force them to go to the grocery store at 2 p.m. It doesn't matter. I just knew they were going to do that. It's the same thing as me reading the text message. It really is. There is no difference between whether I bring them into existence or not.
Well, there are some different schools of thought, and you've got one of the issues that I take and where I think
schools of thought and what?
Yeah, this
with
is
regard to free will and theology.
No. We're talking about Islam here. We're not talking about other schools of thoughts and free will. So don't bring anybody else. We're talking about Islam, the Islamic concept We've all clarified to you. So stay within that framework.
Apparently, there are
now-
different schools of thought within Islamic theology as well. So I hear
Which
it's like
school
some
are you
people,
talking about? Jabariya, Qadiriya, Mu'tazila?
Well, one second,
What are we
Sheikh.
talking-
One second, Sheikh. Don't give him the information. He hasn't studied, apparently.
Oh.
Now all of a sudden he's teaching us again.
well,
Tell us.
Okay.
What if there
All
are
the
what if
schools
there are
of
different
thought.
sects? What if there
Silly
are
What are these
Billy.
schools of thought,
Silly
Tom?
Billy. Can you name the school of thought, though, just so I
no,
can
I
understand
would not be
context?
able to. I would not be able to.
Okay,
but
so then
I
don't
mean,
bring
I
them into it. If you don't even know the name, don't bring them into it. We told you what the Islamic belief is. You asked us. We are the ones that are Muslim. These books are not a green screen, Ijaz. So these are where we study. So now you know the Islamic school of thought. Leave it at that. Discuss it there. Don't try to jump out now. Okay? Asadullah made a great point, and I'm going to ask you, Dom, be honest. That's the only thing I ask you is honesty, right? Let's say, for example, I make you a time machine, right? And you go back to the future. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So you go to the future and you see Khalil is now the head surgeon for a big, hospital, and he has 18 kids, and careful before you make that. And he has 4 wives, right?
Oh,
Now,
he was going to say that.
did
for
you-
what?
Just kidding. Khalil's wife, if you are married. Sorry, I'm just joking.
The alpha cell.
Now,
He's an
now the
alpha.
question is, you come back, because you went on a time machine, right? You know that's what's going to happen for sure. There's only one timeline, right? Are you forcing Khalil?
if I have, well, if we're talking about responsibility, right? Then if I have free knowledge of what happens and I take no action to change things, then will have some responsibility in that action.
What?
How?
You are
So,
responsible
you
for
run.
Khalil
If you
marrying
change
another
things,
female.
then you're affecting free will. you
I'll be right back.
go on.
So,
yeah.
if I go to the future and I
Tom,
see
come
that
on,
he's
bro.
no,
Come on,
listen,
Tom. Come on.
If-
I
if
asked
you-
for
if
honesty,
If you
bro. I
change
asked for
things,
honesty.
then you're controlling people's free will.
no, I didn't say controlling free will, but having some responsibility. And this is the issue.
No, you
that
said
I
if you
have.
change
No,
things,
no,
you
no,
can
no.
change these
Tom,
things.
Tom. Just because you know that Khalil is going to become the head surgeon for a big, hospital, does not mean that you made him. Does
No.
not mean that you're responsible for that.
No. But my issue is with
Tom.
my
Come
issue
on,
is
come
with
on,
sin,
bro.
not with reward. So he does his own
Sure.
thing. He does
Okay.
well.
So,
If
so
I
let's
see-
say you go into the future, and again, I'm just going to give an example here. I mean, please, nobody get offended. Khalil, I'm sorry, I'm going to use you,
Yeah.
right? Let's say you go into the future and you see Khalil's got a big tattoo on his back that I love Sheikh Othman, right? So don't get any ideas, all right? It's a joke, right? Let's say you do that. in the future.
Wait. You mean this one?
Hey, don't show it. Just keep it between us. All right. Right? So you go in the future and you see that he's got a big tattoo that says I love Sheikh Othman. You come back, now you know for sure he's gonna get it. No matter what, it's his decision, he made it. Are you responsible for that decision?
Now, if he's just say he's going to regret this decision, right? And
Look,
I know it.
that's not your
you're not actually
job.
letting
Your
me
job
answer
is
the
not to
question.
influence. Look, listen once again, this is where your mindset shows your limited human thought, right? This is where your IQ level comes into play, because now what you're trying to do is influence his decision. But that's not what you're supposed to do. He knows right from wrong. He knows tattoos are haram. That's his job to make that decision.
We're
Just
moving
because
away
you
from the
know
point, right?
about it does not mean you forced it. The concept
Sure.
is clear. The
But I'm not-
examples you gave, the problem with them, whether it's the ball rolling or whether it's the robot, is all things without free thought, without a
Well-
conscience, without decision making. The examples we gave you,
Your
three,
decisions are based on your past experience. So they're based on every.
Tom,
okay?
Tom, at this juncture, I'm going to let you go.
Radio. I just don't think we're getting the point. The
Look,
point.
No.
I just
I
want
don't
to
think-
ask
no.
you one question before.
I don't think
before we
you're
let you
getting the
go,
point.
Tom, we've discussed these. We've given you examples. It's clear as day. It's okay. You can think about it, ponder the minimum gene concept. Go look it up. How RNA and cellular body works. Go look it up when you go home. No problem. Or when you get time. One question for you. Just one question out of my curiosity, if you don't mind. If you do accept testimony, as you said earlier, if we show that there is clear testimony that the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, split the moon, right? And this is a curiosity question from my side, right? We can give you eyewitness accounts from enemies, from all of that, documented, rigorously checked. And, it was at a physically impossible task done and documented. Would you believe that it had some kind of supernatural force behind it?
If there was enough evidence to present that it actually happened, then you'd...
Excellent. So if we had eyewitness accounts from the supporters of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the enemies of the Prophet, peace be upon him, from different cities within Arabia, if we had historical documentation from other lands, pretty strong evidence, right?
I've seen
Numerous
some of
reports.
that. I'd have to review it to
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let me just leave you with this, and then I'm done with this. Right? Go to the One Message Foundation channel, or you can just Google Sheikh Uthman moon split, and look up the video. I present the evidences, and inshallah, when you're ready to take your shahada, call the show back, and we'll do the shahada.
I'll take a look at it. Thank you. But if I can just
Tom,
if I can make one more statement before we round up, and this is just again working on the free will issue. I know it's frustrating, but I really do feel like we're just butting heads because you've taken the point that we have ability to choose, and I still don't feel that those analogies actually work.
Tom, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. No, we presented you the Islamic position. We demonstrated how knowledge of the future doesn't mean you've determined that future. That's it. You can't bring your hard determinism and force it on us. You want to deal with your paradigm of hard determinism, deal with your determinism, but don't judge what we believe as Muslims on your hard determinism. Yeah?
Okay.
Whether you get it or not.
If you can show any information.
Whether you get it, 1 second, Tom. Whether you get it or not is another thing. But to say Allah being merciful and yet allowing people to go to hellfire knowing what they're going to do in their lives is somehow contradictory is utter nonsense. Utter nonsense. Yeah. And
well, how is that mercy?
What do you mean?
Let me just.
Look, if he's
Allah created you.
Hold on. Just remember one thing, Tom. We don't say Allah's all merciful. Yeah. We're not going to say he's allowing pedophiles and murderers and rapists and whomever into paradise irregardless. Yeah. We say he's the most merciful, more merciful than anything. Yeah.
And how is it just? So my point is, if you've got somebody that is inclined to sin due to their nature, and well, from my point of view, they don't have the ability to do otherwise.
We're not Christians, mate.
Again, this is your problem, right? None of us said that. Your fitra, your inner self, is not what orders you to do sin. Everybody has a choice. Some people, hold on, listen. Some people who were murderers, like the hadith about the one who killed 99 people and then made it 100, he repented, even though he was raised in such an environment and all of that, but he repented. Allah forgave him, right? So you have a choice. This is your mistaken thought that as if your DNA code RNA makes you sin. That's not the way it is. People from the same household, same environment, same people change. Allah is the most merciful. I'll give you an example once again. You got to open your mind a little bit, right? You're a parent. You want the best for your children. You guide them. You give them choices. You educate them. You do whatever you can. In the end, if they still choose not to follow, that has to be their choice, and they have to deal with the consequences. But you were a great parent because you gave them every opportunity. Allah is the most merciful. He loves us. He gives us guidance. He made 4 of us, 5 of us sit and talk to you for this long as a means of guidance for you. He opened up these channels for you, but now it's your choice, and you will be held accountable for your choice.
All right, I'm going to do an Elsa and let you go.
Thanks, mate.
Allah guide you. I mean.
I did when he said that he'd spoke to Yusuf already. I was kind of concerned because that's not the impression he gave from his email. And to say that he's willing to have his mind opened, how does a hard determinist have his mind opened? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway,
but this is the problem. People take Christian ideology or they take their own mindset. Again, the examples he gave were there was no choice. You're a robot, you're programmed, you're a ball rolling down with pins. But the example that Khalil gave and I gave and all of us gave were very clear. I mean, if anybody wants to know the truth, it's evident. Right?
I just want to
But
point out
sometimes
as
it
well.
might take a while. You know?
You said he was willing to have his mind changed.
How does a
Willing.
hard determined have
How can
will
you be
to change his
willing
mind?
without a will?
Right. Okay. So the people have been calling out for a Christian, as it says in Tombstone. You call down the thunder.
I've got a bad feeling. I've got a bad feeling.
Yeah. Call down the thunder, and here it is. No.
Oh,
Oh, come on,
you doing?
Sheikhun, man. Why are you saying? Oh,
I was saying, how you doing?
I thought you were bringing someone else on. To be honest,
That's no
well,
problem.
no,
I'm a little bit
Terry's
relieved.
not been on for a while.
Monsieur Delicieux,
So
qu'est-ce que tu fais
I
ici,
thought we'd have a
monsieur?
taste of Terry.